The human prisoner who didn't bleed. The room was cold. Metal walls hummed quietly. Bright blue lights blinked above rows of alien equipment. Carex, the battle commander of the Zilari warrior caste, stood tall in her black armor, her fingers tapping slowly against her thigh. Her red eyes watched the human prisoner being dragged into the chamber. He was filthy. His clothes were torn. His face was bruised. But there was no blood. None. That alone sent chills through Carex's spine. Two guards pushed him down into the center of the room. Chains made of light energy wrapped around his wrists and ankles, anchoring him to the platform. Carex walked closer and circled him. "You are the only survivor," she said slowly. "3 of our blasts hit you. You should be dead." The tech human lifted his head. His lips were cracked, one of his eyes was swollen, but he smiled. "Nice to meet you too," he whispered. Carex narrowed her eyes. "What is your name?" "Grant." "Grant, what?" "Just Grant." The medics entered. They brought scanners, needles, sensors. Carex watched as they tried everything. They scanned his skin, no burns. They drew blood. Nothing came out. They attached a neural reader. It flickered, then died. One medic stepped back, pale with fear. "Commander, this human is not reacting to our technology. It's like our tools are blind to him." Carex leaned forward. "That is not possible. Every creature bleeds. Every creature breaks." Grant coughed lightly and looked at her. "Maybe. I'm not your regular creature." Carex's second in command, a tall warrior named Thren, whispered in her ear. "Commander, I suggest we kill him now. He's dangerous, unnatural." Carex shook her head slowly. "No, not yet. I want to know why our weapons failed. Why this human walked through fire and came out smiling." She turned to the medics. "Leave us." One by one they filed out, leaving only Carex and Grant in the chamber. Carex stepped closer. Her boots echoed against the metal floor. She leaned down, her face inches from his. "Tell me the truth. Are you wearing hidden armor? Are you modified?" Grant shook his head. "No armor. No tricks. Just human." Carex's eyes flashed. "Then why didn't our weapons work?" Grant looked into her eyes. There was no hate in his gaze, no fear either. "Maybe you don't understand what humans are made of. Then explain it to me. We bleed, but not always from the body. We break, but not always where you can see." Carex frowned. "Speak clearly." "You think pain is just physical," he said. "But real pain is what happens when you lose everything and still keep going. That's why your weapons don't work on me, because I've already been through worse." Carex stepped back slowly. This made no sense. She had fought monsters 3 times his size. She had crushed armored invaders with her bare hands. But this man, this human, was different. She walked to the wall and activated the surveillance recording. The screen lit up. Footage from the battlefield played. Grant's squad had been ambushed. Everyone else fell quickly, burned, sliced, blasted. But Grant, he kept running. He had been hit, yes, but still moved, still fought, still breathed, even when energy beams touched his back. He kept going. Then something even stranger appeared on the footage. When a plasma grenade exploded near him, the blue flames curved. Away from him, as if the fire itself refused to touch him. Carex turned off the recording. "What are you hiding?" she asked again. Grant laughed softly. "We humans are stubborn. That's our secret. Stubborn doesn't stop energy. Blasts. No, but it helps us survive them." Carex studied him silently. His skin didn't glow. His body was not armored. He had no implants. Still, he lived. And more than that, he stood calmly in a chamber meant to break minds. She looked at the chains on his wrists. They were designed to weaken muscles and block thought. But Grant didn't seem weak. If anything, he seemed stronger now than when he entered. "Do you know what happens to prisoners like you?" she asked. Torture? Execution? He shrugged. I've seen worse. Carrix couldn't stop herself. She tilted her head. What happened to you, human? Grant smiled, sadly. You'd need more than scanners to see that story. Carrix left the room, but the word stayed in her head. You think pain is just physical. But real pain is what happens when you lose everything and still keep going. As the door closed behind her, Carrix whispered to herself, Why? Don't our weapons work on humans? And for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Interrogation fails. But the human smiles. The chamber was dark now, not because of power loss, but because Carrix had ordered it that way. Bright light did not break this human, pain did not make him scream. So now, she would try silence, cold, and shadows. Grant sat on the same metal floor, chained and surrounded by advanced Zalari mind tech. It pulsed with soft blue lights around him, designed to read memories, insert commands, even erase fear. But the human only sat calm, eyes half closed, almost like he was meditating. Carrix entered slowly, her tall figure casting a long shadow across the floor. We have used this room to destroy warriors, make murderers beg, shatter even the strongest minds, she said, voice sharp. But you sit here like it's a garden bench. Grant looked up, smiled softly. You ever sat in a real garden, Commander? She frowned. This is not a conversation about flowers, human. You'd be surprised how much you learn when you sit with flowers. Carrix clenched her jaw. She gave the signal. A Zalari. Neural technician stepped forward. He carried a silver ring with blue circuits running across its surface. This is a thought echo reader, he said coldly. It will scan his memories, pull out all truth, no words needed. Try it, Carrix commanded. The technician placed the ring on Grant's head. It hummed, then buzzed louder, and louder. Suddenly, snap. The device cracked in two. Smoke rose from it. The technician stumbled back, eyes wide. Impossible, it's overloaded. His brain rejected the scan. Carrix stared in shock. He broke it? No, it broke itself trying to understand him, like it couldn't read his mind. Grant chuckled. Maybe you're looking for signals that don't exist, or maybe your machines don't speak human. Carrix leaned in, furious now. What is this? Is it training? Implants? Why do your thoughts repel our tech? Grant raised his head and looked her directly in the eyes. You want the truth? She folded her arms. Speak. Our pain is not on the surface, he said slowly. It's deep, hidden behind humor, memories, stubbornness. We don't wear our thoughts on our faces. We've learned to keep them safe. Because if we didn't, we'd never survive our world. Carrix took a step back. This wasn't science, this was something older, stronger, something inside. She waved to her guards. Prepare the Seraph chair. A guard stiffened. Commander, that is, forbidden for non-citizens. I said prepare. Yet moments later, the Seraph chair, a floating ancient interrogation device, was lowered from the ceiling. It had glowing white tendrils, each connected to emotion amplifiers. You feel pain, Grant? Carrix asked. Every day. Then let us feel it too. Grant was placed in the chair. The tendrils latched onto his temples, spine, chest. Soft hum started. Carrix sat at the control table. She pressed the first button. Memory transmission started. For a moment. Nothing. Then, darkness. Cold winds. A small boy. Alone in a broken home. Rain leaking through the roof. A young soldier watching a friend die on Earth's battlefield. A parent. Crying outside a hospital room. A man walking, miles just to hear someone say, I'm proud of you. Carrix gasped. The machine wasn't forcing pain into him. It was pulling real pain out of him, raw, human, unfiltered. She couldn't breathe. Shut it down, she shouted, but the machine refused. It showed more. Laughter at a grave, hope in hopeless places, love for people long gone. The kind of emotions Zalari warriors were never trained to feel. Finally, black, the screen shut off. The machine dropped to the ground. Silent. Grant opened his eyes. They were wet, but his voice was steady. Now you've seen what it means to be human. Carix was speechless. She sat back, hands shaking. You carry this every day? Grant nodded. That's why your tech doesn't break me. I've already lived through worse than anything it can show. Outside the room, Thren waited nervously. Carrick stepped out, pale, silent. Commander? Thren asked. Did he break? She looked back at the door. No, she whispered. Then what now? Carrick's replied, her voice low. Now, we break. He walked into fire and laughed. The night was quiet on the Zalari base. Too quiet. Guards stood at their posts. Drones hovered silently overhead. But something was off. Inside the fortress walls, alarms hadn't rung in hours. The lights flickered. Gently. The prisoners remained in their cages, except for one. Grant was still seated in the corner of his holding cell, but something had changed. His chains lay open, not broken, not cut, simply open. Carrick stared at the footage. Who released him? She demanded. No one answered. No key had been used. No system had been hacked. The chains had just let go. Carrick rushed to the control center. She ordered full lockdown, all exits closed, all plasma weapons set to maximum. But Grant was already moving. He walked through the metal corridors with calm steps, not fast, not sneaky, like a man on a morning stroll. The cameras followed his path. He passed by armored guards, blinking lights, locked doors. Nothing slowed him down. Then, he entered the weapons lab. Inside the lab were containers of molten plasma, deadly energy so hot it could melt ships. And Grant stepped inside. The scientists screamed, "No suit! He has no protection!" One ran for the alarm. Too late. Grant was already in the middle of the plasma chamber. The room turned white-hot. The air trembled. Cameras went static. Carrick, watching the live feed, shouted, "He'll die! Get him out!" Then, the feed returned, and there he stood, alive. The plasma danced around him like fireflies. It didn't touch him. And then, he laughed. Not a mad laugh, not a villain's laugh, but a deep, warm, human laugh. A laugh of wonder. Carrick and her officers stared in disbelief. "Commander," one whispered, "this is not science, it's magic." Carrick slammed her fist on the table. "No, we do not believe in magic. There must be an explanation." Later, Grant was escorted back to his room, not by force, but by request. He walked peacefully, hands behind his back, nodding to the guards as if greeting old friends. Carrick met him outside the cell. "You walked through fire, human?" "Yeah," he replied. "Why didn't it burn you?" He smiled. "Maybe because I wasn't afraid of it." Carrick frowned. "Plasma doesn't care about fear. It consumes all." "Not always," he said. "Where I come from, we've walked through fire before. Not literal fire, but the kind that burns your life away. Pain, loss, war. We survive not because we're fireproof, but because we keep walking." She stared at him in silence. "So this is who you are?" she asked. "You humans keep walking even when you should fall?" Grant looked at her. "Isn't that what warriors do?" She had no answer. That night, Carrick sat alone in her quarters. She replayed every file on human history they had in the archives. Wars, revolutions, survival on hostile planets, people rising from disaster, a species that didn't dominate the stars by strength but by will, and it terrified her. Not because humans were dangerous, but because they were resilient, unstoppable. She whispered to herself. He walked into fire and laughed. Then she stood and made a call to the High Council. This human, he's not a prisoner anymore. He's a message. Message of what? The council asked. Carix looked out the window at the stars. That we have been wrong. The warrior tests him herself. The training arena beneath the Zalari fortress had never seen a human inside it. It was designed for warriors. Massive, circular, and carved deep into the mountain rock, the chamber was where the best of the Zalari elite trained, bled, and proved their worth. But today one man stood at the center of it, unarmed, no armor, just a human Grant. High above in the spectator gallery, Zalari officers murmured. Many shook their heads, some laughed. He's going to be crushed. This is madness. Commander Carix has lost her edge. But Carix said nothing. Her red eyes never blinked. Her arms were crossed because today, she would fight him herself. She stepped forward into the arena, her black armor gleaming with energy fields. Her boots hit the stone like thunder. Grant looked at her calmly. You sure you want to do this? He asked with a half smile. Yes, she said. Because nothing else explains you. You are not stronger than us. Not faster. Not more trained. But you're still standing. I want to see with my own eyes what makes you unbreakable. The arena lights dimmed. Silence fell. The match began. Carix moved fast, inhumanly fast. Her spear swung toward him with deadly precision. Grant ducked, just barely. He moved with no grace, no alien reflexes. But somehow, he stayed standing. Again and again she attacked, high, low, spinning sweeps. Grant dodged some, took hits from others, fell, got back up. Blood now stained his sleeve. A bruise bloomed under his eye. But every time she knocked him down, he stood again. Finally, Carix paused. Why don't you quit? She asked, breathing hard. Grant wiped his mouth and stood again. Because quitting never helped anyone. You're bleeding. That means I'm alive. You're losing. Not if I get up one more time then I fall. Carix stared, and for the first time in years, she lowered her weapon mid-battle. You're not trying to win, she said softly. You're trying to endure. Grant nodded. That's what life taught us. She stepped back, tossed her spear aside. The arena guards gasped. Carix walked to Grant face to face. You are not like other species. Neither are you, he replied. And then something neither of them expected. Carix bowed, a small gesture, one the Zalari warriors never gave. You are the strongest opponent I've ever faced, she said, not because of your skill, but because of your will. Later, in the quiet of her chambers, she sat in silence. She whispered to herself. He stood against me, and I couldn't break him. Then her hand reached for her communicator. Send word to the other planets, she told her officer. This human is no longer a prisoner, he is a guest. But Grant, sitting in his cell, didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. Instead, he looked at the bruise on his arm. Then he whispered to himself, if only they knew how many times I broke before I learned to stand. She shows him her past. For days after the duel, the fortress was quieter. The soldiers didn't mock Grant anymore. They didn't call him fragile. Some even nodded in respect as he passed. But one thing hadn't changed. Carix watched him closely. Only now, it wasn't suspicion in her eyes. It was something else. Something curious. Something personal. One morning, as Grant finished his small meal in the holding wing, Carix walked in, not with guards, but alone. She didn't speak right away. She just stood, watching the man, who had stood up after every fall. Then finally she said, "Come with me." Grant stood. He didn't ask where. He simply followed. They walked through dark halls, up narrow stairs, into a private chamber filled with old relics, scrolls, and glowing memory crystals. Carrick stood before a tall mirror. But this was no ordinary mirror. It shimmered with a soft light. "What is this?" Grant asked. "A memory mirror," she replied. "It can show others what I see, what I remember, what I feel." Grant raised an eyebrow. "And you want me to see yours?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. If I don't show you who I was, you'll never understand who I am now." She touched the mirror, and the room disappeared. Suddenly, they were inside a battlefield. Carrick's memory. A younger version of her stood in battle armor. She shouted orders as energy blasts flew all around. Her troops were dying. She was losing. A general screamed over the comms, "We've been betrayed." Then, silence. The image shifted. Now Carrick stood in front of her fallen sister. Blood on her hands, a broken weapon beside her. Grant watched in silence. He felt her pain, her shame, her silence. The younger Carrick didn't cry. She just clenched her fists and walked away. "I was 17, the real Carrick said behind him. "I was the youngest commander in our army. I failed. I lived, but they all died." "I'm sorry," Grant said softly. "After that I stopped feeling. I became a machine, obey, win, survive, but then you arrived." The image changed again. It now showed Grant walking into fire. It showed him smiling during pain. It showed him comforting a young alien child in the corridor. It showed him bleeding and laughing. Carrick looked at him. "You reminded me what I lost, what I buried." Grant nodded. "Pain can make us cold, but it can also make us brave." The memory mirror faded. They stood in silence again. Then Carrick said something she never thought she'd say. "You made me feel again." Grant looked at her, serious now. "That's not weakness." "I know," she said. "It's life." Later that night, Carrick stood on the observation deck. The stars above were quiet, peaceful. Grant joined her. They stood side by side. No words were needed, just presence and shared pain. Carrick whispered, barely loud enough to hear, "You're not like us, but somehow you understand us better than we understand ourselves." Grant didn't smile this time. He simply placed a hand over his heart and said, "That's what humans do. We carry pain, not just ours, but everyone's." And in that moment, without war or fire or shouting, something powerful happened. The alien warrior and the human prisoner finally saw each other as equals, not as enemies, not as threats, but as survivors. The secret of the human body. The science wing of the Zalari fortress was usually off-limits to prisoners, but this day was different. Grant walked beside Carrick as two scientists led them into the bio-research dome. All around them, alien, machines beeped and hummed. Inside glowing tanks floated DNA strands, organs, even artificial limbs from dozens of species. "Why are we here?" Grant asked calmly. Carrick turned to him. "Because your blood doesn't make sense." She waved. A hand and a large screen lit up. It showed a 3D model of Grant's body. Organs, muscles, veins. The scientist, a thin, blue-skinned Zalari named Dr. Antrell, spoke with awe. "Commander, we've studied over 300 species. Most follow predictable biological rules. But humans," he pointed at the screen, "your immune system is chaotic, violent, but adaptable. You carry bacteria and viruses inside you that would kill most aliens instantly." "Thanks," Grant said, unsure whether it was a compliment. "And your nervous system," Dr. Antrell continued, "has pain receptors that should shut down your body under extreme stress. But yours don't. They keep firing, and your body keeps fighting." Carrick leaned closer. "You walked through molten plasma and you didn't burn. Why?" Grant exhaled. "I honestly don't know. I just believed I could walk through it." The scientists exchanged glances. "That's the other strange thing," Antrell said. "There's something in your brain, an organ we can't identify. It glows under Scans. When we try to analyze it, our tools fail. Maybe it's not meant to be measured, Grant said. It could be the source of your willpower, Antrell added. Your kind doesn't give up. It's not normal, it's biological, and something more. Carrick stepped forward, serious now. There's a theory among our scholars. One we stopped teaching a long time ago. Grant tilted his head. What theory? That humans were not born like others. That long ago your ancestors were changed, given something extra. By who? We don't know. Some say it was punishment. Others say it was a gift, a spark that made your kind refuse to die. The chamber fell silent. Then Carrick looked into Grant's eyes. You're not special because of your strength. You're special because you believe even when there's no reason to. Grant touched his chest. Maybe that's the real secret of being human. We don't just survive. We hope. We dream. We try again. An alert rang out through the fortress. Carrick's turned sharply. What is that? An officer's voice came over the comm. Commander, a hostile ship just dropped out of warp. They've launched drones. The shields are failing. Carrick's eyes widened. The Zalari Syndicate. I thought they were your allies, Grant said. They were, until they found out I spared a human. Red lights flashed. The fortress shook as explosions sounded in the distance. Carrick looked at Grant. You need to hide. I'll deal with them. Grant stepped forward. No. What? You showed me your memories, your pain, your truth. I'm not hiding while you fight alone. Carrick stared for a moment, then slowly. She nodded. Then stand with us. In the next few minutes, Grant was handed a basic Zalari weapon. He had never used alien tech before, but as he looked down at it, a strange calm settled over him. He didn't need to know how it worked. He just needed to stand. As they ran toward the blast doors, Carrick turned to him and asked one last question. Why are you helping us? After everything we did to you? Grant looked at her. Because we're not our pasts. We're what we choose next. And with that, the human and the alien commander stepped into battle, side by side. He bled for aliens and changed the galaxy. The fortress shook again. Drones tore through the outer gates. Smoke filled the air. Screams echoed down the corridors. But in the center of the chaos, the human and the Zalari commander stood, side by side. Carrick shouted, giving orders to her soldiers. Grant, holding his alien rifle awkwardly, took cover. Behind a metal column, he was no soldier, no trained killer. But his heart didn't shake. His hands didn't tremble. He had one goal now: protect the people who had once feared him. A drone flew low, lasers flashing. Grant rolled, raised the rifle, and fired blindly. The blast hit the drone's core. It exploded in midair. The nearby Zalari warriors stared at him in awe. He doesn't even know how to use the weapon properly, one said. But he fights like he was born for it, whispered another. Carrick called to him. Follow me, we have to hold the power chamber. They ran together, dodging fire, crawling under fallen beams. A collapsing wall nearly crushed them both. Grant pushed her forward, taking the edge of the fall on his back. His body screamed in pain, but he kept running. In the power chamber, the enemy breached the final door. Elite Syndicate soldiers rushed in. Carrick charged them, blades drawn. Grant followed, unarmed now, out of shots. One Syndicate soldier raised his plasma rifle and fired at Carrick. Grant jumped in front of her. The shot hit his chest. He collapsed. Everything went still. Carrick spun around. No. She dropped beside him, pressing her hands against the wound. Why? Why would you protect me? Grant opened one eye and smiled faintly. Because that's what friends do. Behind her, the Zalari troops screamed with fury. They surged forward, taking down the Syndicate invaders. Carrick stood up, eyes glowing with rage, and led the charge. In minutes, the enemies were gone. Silence. The fortress stood, damaged, but not fallen. Carrick knelt beside Grant once more. His chest rose and fell, weak, but alive. He survived. Weeks passed. The news spread across the stars. A human had fought for aliens, bled for them, saved them, and not just any alien, he had saved a Zalari commander, one of the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. The Galactic Council met to review the event. They expected war, but instead, they found unity. Carrick stood before the council, wearing ceremonial armor. "We captured this human as a threat," she said, "but he became our teacher. He reminded us of honor, of resilience, of hope." Grant, still healing, was invited to speak. He stood slowly, his back straight, his voice calm. "I didn't come here to change anyone," he said. "I just didn't want to give up. And maybe that's what the galaxy needs, less giving up, more standing up." There was silence. Then, applause. Not just from humans, from aliens, from diplomats, from enemies turned allies. That day, a new treaty was signed, a human and an alien hand in hand. Carrick and Grant stood together, on the observation deck weeks later, the stars stretched wide before them. "You bled for us," she said softly. "Would do it again," he replied. "You've changed us." Grant looked at her with a gentle smile. "You changed too." Then, without warning, Carrick removed the elite badge from her chest and pinned it on his. "You are no longer just human, Grant. You are Zalari too." "Honorary?" "No," she said. "Real." The stars sparkled outside. Two beings, once enemies, stood in peace. And across the galaxy, children of every species told the tale of a strange human, the one who walked through fire, fought without training, and refused to fall. The human who changed everything, not with power, but with heart.